The desperate call commander Vex-9 stood before the massive communication array on Thyros, watching the crimson glow of their dying star paint the sky in shades of doom. The elegant crystalline spires of their capital city stretched toward the heavens, but even their advanced technology could not save them from the inevitable. Their sun was going supernova, and they had perhaps 6 months before their world became uninhabitable. The Zelrani had ruled this sector of space for over 3,000 years. Their crystalline bodies, which could shift between solid and energy states, had allowed them to build a civilization that blended organic life with pure energy manipulation. They were considered one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, second only to the mighty Korthak Empire that dominated the galactic core. "Commander, the transmission array is ready," reported Sub-Commander Yilnara, her crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. "We have calculated the exact coordinates for the Korthak capital world of Dominion Prime." Vex-9 nodded, his own form solidifying with determination. The Korthaks had been their allies for centuries, though contact had been sporadic in recent decades. Surely their ancient pact still held meaning. The Korthak Empire possessed the technology to relocate entire populations across vast distances. They were the Zelrani's only hope. "Begin transmission," Vex-9 commanded. "Full power. Include all cultural data, technological specifications, and population numbers. Hold nothing back." The array hummed to life, channeling the combined energy of their planetary grid. The message rocketed across space, carrying with it the hopes of 12 billion Zelrani souls. What none of them knew was that a single miscalculation in their ancient star charts would send their desperate plea in an entirely different direction. Halfway across the galaxy, on a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, Dr. Sarah Chen was finishing another quiet night shift at the Arecibo Successor Array in Puerto Rico. The massive radio telescope had been humanity's ear to the cosmos for decades, searching for any sign that Earth was not alone in the universe. Sarah yawned and reached for her third cup of coffee, when every alarm in the facility began screaming. Data flooded her screens in patterns she had never seen before. The signal was impossibly complex, carrying mathematical proofs, star charts, and what appeared to be a desperate message from an unknown civilization. "This can't be real," she whispered, her hands shaking as she ran every verification protocol they had. But the data was consistent, the patterns were clear, and the mathematical foundations were elegantly beautiful. Someone was out there, and they were asking for help. Within hours, the small research facility became the center of the scientific world. Government officials, military personnel, and leading scientists converged on the site. The signal was analyzed, decoded, and verified by teams working around the clock. What they found changed everything. Captain Marcus Rivera arrived with the first military assessment team, a decorated Space Force officer with 15 years of experience. He had overseen humanity's modest expansion into their own solar system. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this moment. "Dr. Chen, what exactly are we looking at?" Rivera asked, studying the translated message on the main display. Sarah's voice was hoarse from hours of briefings. "They call themselves the Zelrani. Their star is going supernova. They have approximately 6 months before their homeworld becomes uninhabitable. 12 billion lives, Captain." Rivera studied the star charts the aliens had provided. "How far away are they?" 237 light-years, Sarah replied. "At our current technology level, it would take our fastest ships nearly 8 months to reach them, assuming we could even make the journey." The weight of the situation settled over the room. Humanity had barely established permanent colonies on Mars and the outer planets. Their technology was primitive compared to what the Zelrani had described in their message. Yet here was an entire civilization calling out for help. "There's something else," Sarah continued, pulling up another section of the decoded message. "They weren't calling us. The signal was addressed to something called the Korthak Empire. We just happened to intercept it." General Patricia Walsh, head of Space Force Command, leaned forward. "Are you saying this was a wrong number?" Sarah nodded. The Zelrani expected their message to be received by their allies, a species they describe as having vast fleets and advanced technology. Instead, they got us. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. An alien civilization facing extinction had accidentally contacted the one species in the galaxy least equipped to help them. It should have been a cruel cosmic joke, but something in the desperation of the Zelrani message struck a chord that resonated with every human in the room. President Elizabeth Harrison arrived at the facility as dawn broke over Puerto Rico. She listened to the briefings with the weight of history on her shoulders. First contact with an alien species should have been humanity's greatest triumph. Instead, it was a desperate race against time. "Can we help them?" she asked simply. Dr. James Park, Earth's leading physicist, cleared his throat. "Madam President, the Zelrani technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their energy manipulation capabilities alone would require us to rewrite our understanding of physics. But," he paused, looking at the assembled team. "Their message included technical specifications. If we could adapt even a fraction of their knowledge to our existing ships," Captain Rivera stepped forward. "We have 47 deep space vessels across the fleet, cargo haulers, research ships, military frigates. If we stripped them down, modified their life support systems, and pushed our engines beyond safety limits, we might be able to carry a few thousand Zelrani to safety. A few thousand out of 12 billion, General Walsh said quietly. "It's better than zero," Rivera replied firmly. The debate that followed would be remembered as humanity's defining moment. Scientists argued about technological feasibility. Military leaders worried about resource allocation. Politicians calculated the political costs of such an unprecedented undertaking. But gradually, one voice began to emerge from the chaos. They had to try. President Harrison made the announcement to the world 18 hours after first contact. "My fellow humans, today we learned that we are not alone in the universe. We have received a distress call from a dying world, a civilization facing extinction through no fault of their own. They did not call us. They do not know us. They have no reason to expect help from a species they have never met, but they asked for help, and help is what they will receive." The response was unprecedented. Every nation on Earth contributed ships, resources, and personnel. Civilian cargo vessels were volunteered by their captains. Military ships were retrofitted with expanded life support systems. Scientists worked around the clock to understand and adapt Zelrani technology from the specifications in their message. Sarah Chen led the effort to send a reply to the Zelrani. The message was simple and direct. "Zelrani people, we have received your distress call. We are not the allies you expected, but we are coming to help. Hold on." The response came back within days, carried on the same communication frequencies the Zelrani had provided. Commander Vex 9's translated words appeared on screens around the world. "Unknown humans of Earth, your response brings hope to our people. We do not understand how our message reached you instead of the Korthak Empire, but we are grateful. However, we must warn you that the journey you propose is beyond the capabilities you have described. Our situation may be more dangerous than you realize." Captain Rivera, now promoted to admiral and placed in command of the rescue fleet, read the warning with growing concern. The Zelrani had included additional information about their sector of space, including references to hostile species and territorial disputes. What they were proposing was not just a rescue mission, but potentially a journey into an active war zone. "Admiral," Dr. Chen said as they reviewed the latest transmission. "There's something else. The Zelrani have been trying to contact the Korthak Empire through other channels. They're not responding." Rivera frowned. "Technical difficulties?" "Unknown. But the Zelrani are starting to worry that something has happened to their allies." As the weeks passed and Earth's rescue fleet took shape, more troubling information emerged from subsequent Zelrani transmissions. The Korthak Empire, their ancient allies, had been silent for over 50 years. Trade routes had been disrupted. Ships had disappeared. The galaxy was not the stable place the Zelrani had believed it to be. Engineer Prime Zekar, the Zelrani's leading technology specialist, began working directly with human scientists through the communication link. His amazement at human ingenuity came through clearly in every transmission. Dr. Park, he messaged, your species' ability to adapt and improvise is remarkable. You are using technologies in ways we never considered possible. Dr. Park smiled as he read the message. We're good at making things work even when they shouldn't. The human fleet began launching in stages, with Admiral Rivera's flagship, the UES Determination, leading the way. 47 ships, carrying the hopes of two worlds, set course for a distant star system where 12 billion lives hung in the balance. As Earth fell away behind them, Rivera stood on his bridge watching the stars. They were heading into the unknown, outgunned and outclassed by every measure that mattered. But they were going anyway because when someone called for help, humans answered. They had no idea that their arrival would spark a confrontation that would reshape the balance of power in their entire sector of the galaxy. The impossible journey. The journey to Thyros stretched across 8 months of uncertainty and improvisation. Admiral Rivera's fleet pushed through space at speeds that would have been considered reckless under normal circumstances. Every day brought new challenges as human engineering ingenuity was tested against the harsh reality of interstellar travel. Admiral Elena Vasquez had been promoted to overall fleet commander when Rivera was reassigned to diplomatic duties. A veteran of the Mars colonial missions, she understood the delicate balance between pushing equipment to its limits and maintaining enough reserves for the unexpected. Her weathered face bore the marks of someone who had spent years making impossible decisions in impossible situations. Admiral, we're receiving another technical data packet from Engineer Prime Zekar, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the communication station. He's concerned about our power coupling efficiency in the modified life support systems. Vasquez moved to the engineering station where Dr. James Park and his team had been working nonstop to integrate Zelrani technology concepts into human systems. The collaboration between species had produced innovations that neither could have achieved alone. What's the Zelrani's assessment? Vasquez asked. Dr. Park looked up from his calculations, exhaustion evident in his eyes. Zekar is amazed that our systems work at all. According to Zelrani physics, our power coupling should have failed weeks ago. He's trying to understand how we're maintaining stability with what he considers primitive technology. The truth was that human engineers had been forced to become creative in ways the Zelrani couldn't comprehend. Where Zelrani technology relied on elegant energy manipulation and crystalline precision, humans had developed a philosophy of redundancy, adaptation, and what their military called aggressive maintenance. Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos, Earth's finest mechanical engineer, had become something of a legend among the Zelrani. Her daily reports to Zekar described repairs and modifications that violated every principle of Zelrani engineering, but somehow kept working. Chief Santos, Zekar had messaged after her latest report, you have attached 17 backup systems to a power coupling designed for 3. This should not function. Well, it does, Santos had replied simply. We call it redundant redundancy. If something can break, we assume it will break, so we build 3 different ways to fix it before it happens. The cultural exchange worked both ways. The Zelrani provided detailed information about their technology, their history, and most importantly, their warnings about the galactic political situation. What they revealed painted a picture of a galaxy very different from human expectations. Admiral, called Dr. Chen from her xenological analysis station, we've received new intelligence about the Korthak Empire. It's not good news. Vasquez reviewed the data with growing concern. The Korthak Empire had indeed been the Zelrani's allies for centuries, but recent information suggested that relationship had changed dramatically. Zelrani long-range sensors had detected massive Korthak fleet movements in recent years, all heading toward territories that had once been independent. Engineer Prime Zekar's latest transmission was particularly troubling. Admiral Vasquez, we have detected Korthak vessels entering our system. They arrived shortly after we lost contact with you due to the solar storm. Their initial communications claimed they were responding to our distress call, but their actions suggest otherwise. They have established positions around our outer colonies and are demanding detailed technological specifications before beginning any evacuation. The implication was clear. The Korthaks weren't coming to help. They were coming to claim whatever they could salvage from the Zelrani civilization before it died. How long until we reach the Thyro system? Vasquez asked her navigation officer. 6 weeks at current speed, Admiral. And how long until the Zelrani star goes critical? Dr. Park consulted his latest calculations. Based on their data, approximately 7 weeks. We're cutting it very close. Vasquez studied the tactical display showing their fleet's position. 47 human ships carrying modified life support systems capable of evacuating perhaps 50,000 Zelrani if they packed them in like refugees. Against them, potentially, was the might of the Korthak Empire, a civilization that had been conquering star systems when humans were still learning to make fire. The next communication from Zekhar confirmed their worst fears. Admiral, the Korthak, Fleet Commander War Marshal Throck, has made his intentions clear. He claims the Zelrani forfeited their independence by failing to maintain proper tribute payments to the Empire. He considers our people and our technology to be legitimate salvage. He has given us 3 days to surrender our technological databases and submit to protective custody before he begins forced evacuations to Korthak labor worlds. Dr. Chen looked up from her console, her face pale. Admiral, we need to understand what we're walking into. The Zelrani have provided more historical data about the Korthaks. They're not just territorially aggressive, they're fundamentally different from us in how they view other species. The data was sobering. The Korthak Empire viewed other sapient species as resources to be managed and exploited. Their concept of alliance was closer to what humans would call protection racketeering. Species under Korthak protection provided tribute in the form of technology, resources, and population for the Empire's expansion efforts. The Zelrani were different, Dr. Chen explained. Their technology was valuable enough that the Korthaks treated them as junior partners rather than subjects. But apparently that partnership required regular demonstrations of loyalty and technological sharing that the Zelrani had been neglecting. Vasquez absorbed this information with the calm of a professional military officer, but internally she was calculating odds that didn't look favorable. The human fleet was traveling at maximum sustainable speed toward a confrontation with an empire that could field hundreds of ships against their 47 converted cargo haulers and research vessels. What are our advantages? She asked her. Senior Staff Commander Rivera, now serving as diplomatic liaison, spoke first. The Korthaks don't know we're coming. They've never encountered humans before, so they have no idea what to expect from us tactically. Chief Santos added, Our ships are tougher than they look. We've been modifying them for 8 months with both human and Zelrani improvements. They might not be elegant, but they're built to keep working when everything goes wrong. Dr. Park offered the most significant insight. The Zelrani have been sharing their complete technological database with us, including things they never shared with the Korthaks. If we can successfully evacuate even a fraction of their population, we'll have access to scientific knowledge that could advance human civilization by centuries. But the most important advantage came from an unexpected source. Elder historian Quendal, the keeper of Zelrani cultural memory, sent a message that changed everything. Humans of Earth, I have studied your historical records that Dr. Chen provided. Your species has a concept that we find remarkable, and that the Korthaks would consider insane. You call it the principle of the thing. You will sometimes choose to fight battles you cannot win because your moral principles demand it. This is not logical, but it may be exactly what our people need to see. The Korthaks rule through the demonstration of overwhelming power. They have never faced a species that would choose to fight, rather than submit to superior force. As the fleet entered the final weeks of their journey, the tone of Zelrani transmissions began to change. Word had spread among their population that an unknown species called humans was coming to help them, not because of ancient alliances or political obligations, but simply because they had asked for help. Zekhar's engineering reports began including observations about human psychology. Admiral, my people are fascinated by your species' approach to problem solving. When we describe a technical challenge as impossible, your engineers ask impossible how, and then proceed to find ways around the impossibility. This is not how advanced civilizations typically think. The most significant development came when Zelrani scientists began applying human problem-solving approaches to their own challenges. Working together through the communication link, human and Zelrani engineers developed new evacuation procedures that could move more people faster than either species had thought possible. "We're learning from each other," Dr. Park reported to Admiral Vasquez. "The Zelrani are masters of elegant efficiency, but humans are masters of chaotic effectiveness. Combined, we're achieving things neither of us could do alone." As they prepared for arrival at Thyros, one message from Commander Vex 9 summed up the situation perfectly. "Admiral Vasquez, War Marshal Throck has demanded that we cease all communications with unknown aliens and submit to Korthak authority immediately. I have informed him that we are in communication with our new allies from Earth, and that any threats against human vessels will be considered acts of war against the Zelrani people." He was surprised by our response. "I believe your arrival will be most educational for all involved." The stage was set for a confrontation between three very different civilizations: the Korthaks, who ruled through fear and superior technology; the Zelrani, who valued knowledge and cooperation; and the humans, who had traveled across the galaxy for no reason other than that someone had asked for help. Admiral Vasquez stood on her bridge as the Thyros system appeared on their sensors, knowing that the next few days would determine not just the fate of the Zelrani people, but humanity's place in a galaxy that was about to learn what humans were really like when someone they cared about was threatened. When humanity stands firm, the Thyros system hung before them like a jewel box of dying light. Admiral Vasquez watched as her sensors revealed the full scope of the crisis. A red giant star swelling toward its final collapse, 3 habitable worlds with billions of crystalline beings, and a massive fleet of angular black ships that could only belong to the Korthak Empire. "Admiral, we're being hailed by the Korthak flagship," reported Lieutenant Commander Kim. "They're demanding identification and immediate departure from what they call Imperial salvage operations." Vasquez studied the tactical display. 37 Korthak warships formed a blockade around Thyros Prime, while smaller vessels conducted what appeared to be forced evacuations from the planet's surface. The Zelrani's own ships were conspicuously absent from defensive positions. "Put the Korthak commander on screen," Vasquez ordered. The main display flickered to life, revealing War Marshal Throck. The Korthak leader was an imposing figure, standing, nearly 3 meters tall with reptilian features and 4 muscular arms. His black uniform bore the insignia of conquest across a dozen star systems. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute power. "Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in Imperial space during authorized salvage operations. Identify yourselves and depart immediately or be destroyed." Admiral Vasquez stepped forward, her expression calm despite the odds they faced. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet. We are responding to a distress call from the Zelrani people. We demand immediate access to coordinate humanitarian evacuations." Throck's 4 eyes fixed on her with what might have been amusement. "Humans, we have no record of your species in Imperial databases. You appear to be operating primitive vessels and making demands far beyond your capability to enforce. This system now belongs to the Korthak Empire. The Zelrani are under our protection." "Protection?" Dr. Chen had patched into the communication channel from her analysis station. "We've monitored your forced evacuations. You're separating families and taking the youngest and strongest to your labor worlds while leaving the elderly and sick behind." War Marshal Throck's expression hardened. "The efficient utilization of resources during crisis management is an Imperial prerogative. Dr. Sarah Chen, xenological specialist, and I'm telling you that what you're doing is not protection. It's exploitation of a humanitarian crisis." The Korthak leader studied the humans for a long moment. "Interesting. A species that travels interstellar distances to interfere in situations that do not concern them. How remarkably inefficient." He leaned forward. "You have 30 minutes to depart this system before we demonstrate why the Korthak Empire has ruled this sector for 3,000 years." The communication ended, leaving the human fleet alone with their thoughts and their determination. "Admiral, called Commander Rivera from the tactical station. "I'm receiving coded transmissions from Commander Vex 9. The Zelrani want to coordinate with us, but they're afraid of Korthak retaliation." "What's our strategic assessment?" Vasquez asked her senior staff. Chief Santos was blunt. 37 Korthak warships against 47 human ships, most of which are converted cargo haulers. By any reasonable military analysis, we're outgunned by at least 5-1. Dr. Park added. But the Korthaks don't know anything about human technology or tactics. Their sensors show our ships as primitive, but they can't detect the modifications we've made. The most important intelligence came from an unexpected source. Elder historian Quendal had managed to transmit detailed information about Korthak military doctrine through a concealed communication array. "Admiral," Dr. Chen reported, "the Zelrani have provided us with 3 centuries of data about Korthak tactics. They rely on overwhelming displays of superior technology to force immediate surrender. They've never faced a species that fought back after seeing their fleet strength." Lieutenant Ana Rodriguez, humanity's best fighter pilot, had been listening from the hangar bay where she was prepping her squadron. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" "Granted, Lieutenant. The Korthaks made one critical mistake. They gave us 30 minutes to think about this." Rodriguez's voice carried the confidence of someone who had never backed down from a fight. "That's 29 minutes more than we need to decide we're not leaving." Admiral Vasquez found herself smiling despite the circumstances. "All ships, battle stations, implement evacuation protocol Sierra 7. We're going to show the Korthaks what happens when they threaten people under human protection." What followed was a masterclass in human tactical thinking. Instead of engaging the Korthak fleet directly, the human ships dispersed throughout the system using a pattern that seemed random but was actually carefully coordinated. Each human vessel began transmitting on Zelrani communication frequencies, announcing their presence and offering immediate evacuation assistance. The effect was immediate and profound. Across Thyros Prime, Zelrani settlements that had been quietly submitting to Korthak protective custody suddenly began resisting. Crystalline beings who had been boarding Korthak transports began demanding to wait for the human evacuation ships instead. War Marshal Throck's response was swift and brutal. Korthak forces opened fire on several Zelrani settlements, intending to demonstrate the cost of resistance, but they had not anticipated the human response. Lieutenant Rodriguez led her fighter squadron in a direct attack on the Korthak ships, bombarding civilian targets. The small human fighters should have been destroyed instantly by the superior Korthak weaponry, but Rodriguez had spent months studying Zelrani defensive technologies and had modified her squadron's ships with adaptive shielding that confused Korthak targeting systems. "This is Rodriguez to all pilots," she broadcast as her squadron danced between Korthak capital ships. "Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional engagement. We're buying time for the evacuation and showing these bullies that someone is willing to fight for the Zelrani." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Human ships, individually inferior to their Korthak counterparts, fought with a combination of tactics that stressed adaptability over overwhelming force. They used the system's asteroid fields for cover, coordinated attacks that forced Korthak ships to fire dangerously close to their own vessels, and most importantly, they refused to break off even when taking heavy damage. Chief Santos's modifications proved their worth as human ships absorbed punishment that should have destroyed them and kept fighting. "Admiral," she reported from the engine room of the Determination, "the Korthaks keep targeting our primary systems, but we've got so many backups and redundancies that we're still operational even after what they consider killing blows." The turning point came when Commander Vex 9 made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Watching human fighters sacrifice themselves to protect Zelrani evacuation sites, he ordered the remaining Zelrani defense fleet to join the battle. "All Zelrani vessels," his transmission echoed across every frequency, "we stand with our human allies. The Korthaks have shown their true nature and humanity has shown theirs. Choose your side." The combined human Zelrani fleet was still outnumbered, but they fought with a coordination born of shared purpose rather than imperial dominance. Zelrani energy manipulation technology, merged with human adaptive tactics, created combinations that the Korthax had never encountered. War Marshal Throck found himself facing something that violated every principle of Korthak military doctrine, an inferior force that refused to acknowledge its inferiority. When he ordered the destruction of human ships, more appeared to take their place. When he threatened Zelrani civilians, human fighters threw themselves between the weapons and their targets. The final confrontation came when Throck himself took direct command of the Korthak flagship, intending to destroy Admiral Vasquez's ship. As an example, the Determination was badly damaged with multiple system failures and a crew that had been fighting beyond their limits for 18 hours. "Admiral," reported Commander Rivera, "he's demanding our surrender. Full power to weapons. Targeting our bridge." Vasquez looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were exhausted, battered, and facing a ship that could destroy them with a single volley. But no one suggested surrender. "All human and Zelrani vessels," she broadcast on open channels. "This is Admiral Vasquez. We came here because someone asked for help. We're not leaving until everyone who wants to leave can leave safely." What happened next would be remembered as the moment that changed galactic politics forever. Instead of destroying the human flagship, War Marshal Throck hesitated. For the first time in his military career, he was facing a force that fought not for conquest or territory, but for principles. That hesitation cost him the battle. Elder historian Quen Dahl had been working with Dr. Park to understand Korthak technology, and they had discovered a critical vulnerability in Imperial ship design. Using this knowledge, the combined fleet launched a coordinated strike that disabled the Korthak flagship's main weapons. In the aftermath, as rescue operations continued and the Korthak fleet limped away from Thyros, War Marshal Throck sent a final message. "Admiral Vasquez, the Korthak Empire has ruled this galaxy for 3 millennia. We have never encountered a species like yours. This engagement will be studied." The evacuation of Thyros took 3 more weeks. Working together, human and Zelrani engineers managed to save over 2 million Zelrani lives, far more than anyone had thought possible. The refugees were distributed between Earth's colonies and new settlements in systems that the Zelrani had explored but never colonized. Commander Vex 9 stood beside Admiral Vasquez on the bridge of the Determination as they watched the last transport ships depart. Behind them, Theros Prime's sun was beginning its final expansion. "Admiral," Vex 9 said, his crystalline form flickering with emotions that didn't translate well to human perception, "my people called for help by mistake. We expected the Korthax to answer. Instead, we found something far more valuable." "What's that?" Vasquez asked. "We found allies who came not because they had to, but because they chose to. The galaxy is going to be a very different place now that humanity has announced its presence." As the combined fleet departed the dying Thyros system, they carried with them more than refugees. They carried the beginning of a new galactic alliance, based on cooperation rather than domination, mutual aid rather than exploitation, and the radical human idea that sometimes the right thing to do is help, even when no one expects you to. The Zelrani had asked for help by mistake, but they had received exactly what they needed. Proof that in a galaxy full of empires and conquest, there was at least one species that would cross the void simply because someone was in trouble. The sky no longer belonged to the Korthax alone. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.